Hi, my name's Elijah, and welcome to my podcast, Songwriting for Songwriters. My special guest this week is record producer Chris Potter. Chris has worked on some of the biggest records of our time, including Urban Hymns by the Verve and most of Richard Ashcroft's solo albums. He's worked with U2, the Rolling Stones, Gabrielle, and many, many more. He also worked on our record, The Wild Night by the Gravity Drive. We sit down and speak about songwriting, about being a record producer, and getting the most from songs and artists in the studio. So thank you for listening. Please subscribe and enjoy this podcast. Joining me today on the Songwriting for Songwriters podcast is Chris Potter. How are you, Chris?
I'm well, thank you.
Good, good. Have you been working in the studio today?
Yeah, I have. I'm just doing a mix today, so
Fantastic.
yeah, been at the coalface.
Are you at the coalface quite often? Is that a day-to-day thing?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's been a busy year so far, but yeah, there's been a lot going on. So, I mean, with any of these things, it does come and go in waves sometimes. But yeah, at the moment, very, very busy.
That's good. So are you working on at the moment? I mean, you may not be able to mention names, but what kind of stuff are you working on at the moment?
Yeah, I'm doing a young artist who we've been doing a few tracks with over the course of probably the last 6 months or so. And yeah, weirdly, actually, it's been a project where we've sort of needed to get involved in the writing, actually, which is something that I generally haven't done massive amounts of. I've sort of, as a producer, I've kind of shied away from too much of the kind of writing and specifically playing, actually, on the records that I work on, because I've sort of felt in the past that it kind of messes with your objectivity a little bit. It sort of skews that, if I'm not involved in playing or writing, and I'm just thinking about the record, the song, the performances, the record, the production, I find that quite a clear. That's usually quite a clear path. But as soon as you kind of bring one of those other elements in, it tends to sort of. It has in the past, and it was felt like it was going to skew skew my objectivity a little bit, and so it's quite a new thing for me. But over the last couple of years, 2-3 years maybe, I've certainly been playing a lot more, and started delving into the kind of writing where projects I've needed it.
Forgive me for asking you this, because I've known you as obviously you've worked with us and we're friends, but I don't. This is really bad. I don't actually know what instruments you play, which is really neat. It's like after all this time, you talking about that, I've realised I don't actually know. I didn't actually know necessarily.
Well, I started playing bass, and I play a bit of guitar and a very small bit of keyboards, and all of them quite badly, but. You know how it is. You kind of hear ideas, and you can kind of make ideas happen. And digital technology. We have the technology to make things sound good. So it's more about the idea that for me, in terms of the things sort of musically for me, it's more about the idea and getting the idea to sound good than it is necessarily about the performance from personal point of view. Obviously, for other, for the artists I'm working with, it's all about.
So did you? I mean, before you went into production, were you like in a band and there was music? Were you one of the kids that was in a band then found production?
Yeah,
you were.
Yeah, that's how I got involved. Really, I was placing in sort of bands, little kind of local things. And always seemed to enjoy always enjoyed the recording, doing the demos more than the gigs, really.
Okay. Yeah.
So I kind of ended up getting into it through that. I listened to the one you did with Pete a few weeks.
Yeah.
And a similar story, actually. I'd kind of got to the end of A levels, hit a bit of a kind of, whoa, what am I going to do now? There was a plan to go to university and do architecture, and that for one reason or another, that didn't quite happen. So I had a summer where I had to decide what the hell I was going to do, and I ended up spending that summer walking around sort of I got a book off a friend of mine, a book of recording studios. And I walked around all the recording studios in London, which obviously there aren't many now, but back then there were hundreds of them. So yeah, I spent a few weeks walking around London, knocking on studio doors, asking for a job, and getting a lot of knockbacks and a lot of no. But met a lot of friendly, I met a lot of friendly people. And then after I'd done it day in, day out I'd started repeating myself, going back to the same places. I remember it was a Friday afternoon, and I was kind of, I going to carry on and do the rest of these today, or am I going to knock it on the head and maybe come back Monday and maybe have the weekend to think about whether this is actually going to work or not? So I started to kind of wonder, because it had been a few weeks. I mean, I'd done it, religiously day in, day out for about a month. And like I say, it was a Friday afternoon. I had a couple more on the list. And I went into a place called Nova Sound, which was in Bryanston Street up by Marble Arch. And asked the question, and by pure luck, they were looking for somebody. So they said, well, you can come back and do a trial on Monday.
Wow.
And if it goes well,
Wow. It sort of seems like those days in a way are
yeah,
kind of gone now. Like
they're totally gone. Yeah, there was no sort of music tech qualifications or university courses or any of that stuff. That just didn't exist.
But also, what's really interesting about what you said there, and it's something I believe in, is persistence and knocking on the doors and just like going to, sort of with no idea or no kind of contacts or nepotism at work. It's like turn up and see.
Turn up and see. Yeah. And it wasn't like I had a load of experience, or I didn't know anything at all. So, apart from just the few little demos that we'd done with the band and stuff, and just watching what the guy was doing, but nothing really.
You started there, what, like a tape hop kind of
back? Yeah. So essentially, just setting up the mics and doing everything the engineer needed you to do, and going and getting the producers cigarettes and sandwiches, runner essentially. And then that sort of that was a good studio to learn in. Actually, I wasn't there very long because they unfortunately closed about 3 months after I'd started there. But in that 3 months, I'd got had my foot in the door. I got a lot of experience in that time because it was a working jingle studio. So we were doing probably 3 sessions a day, and all with different lineups, all live recording, all different session musicians. So you'd have a morning session, you might have a lunchtime session, an afternoon session. And in the morning, it might be drums, bass, guitar, piano, a couple of backing singers, and a lead vocalist. And then the lunchtime one might be maybe just piano and some singers. And then in the afternoon, it might be like a string quartet and a different drummer and a different bass player. So all these different lineups just changing all the time, every day. So you had to be quick, and you had to, it was a steep learning curve,
Yeah.
So at the point that studio closed, I got very lucky, and I think it really helped that I had the experience of those few months. And I got a job at a studio called Maison Rouge, which at the time was really, it was one of the best studios in London at the time. With a lot of big artists going through there. So when I started there, I was working with a lot of really top end engineers and producers and artists and stuff. So you kind of had to get your thing together quite quickly, But again, that was great experience, and I really learned so much so quickly.
How old are you at that point? Like,
I think I was 20 at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 20.
It's something which comes up as you're talking is the amount of people that you work with, like from day to day. Like you talking about those jingle sessions.
Yeah.
The turnover of musicians, engineers, bands, artists. A lot of, I think a job of a producer and an engineer in some ways is, as well as managing the microphones, is managing people, isn't it?
Absolutely right. Yeah. That's more critical, really. That's much more critical. Studios are weird. They're kind of weird places when you're recording. There's a lot of different energy coming and going in the room. While you're making a record, there can be a lot of pressure and a lot of different egos, a lot of different situations to manage.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I think just being a bit of a calming presence in that situation, in those situations, is pretty important. You need to be the right person in the room, really.
Yeah, I think that's like I spoke to you before last time we met. We're just talking about from my point of view when we worked with you, because it was a step up in a way for us because we hadn't really worked in a studio. We'd had our home studio and somebody that I'd wanted to work with. But as soon as you were in the room, it was like, okay, someone's in the command center at the chair, and this you're almost allowed as the artist to kind of relax a bit because someone's got control of this, and
somebody knows.
You're able to be the little artist nutter you are, whatever. So because that feeling of calm control, stewardship, and calm control, which is you have that, and I think that's it's like you said. I think it's pretty important when there's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it's. I think probably the best thing you can do as a producer is give the artist all of the rope that they need to be able to kind of just explore every different scenario. And you would hope, you sort of hope that you can create an environment where they feel relaxed enough to be able to express whatever they want down a microphone with no inhibitions. Do you know what I mean? Because that's where you're really going to get at that's where you're really going to get at the core, the core stuff that you really kind of want. If someone's just, feels that they can completely open up into the microphone, take risks, and, not feel self-conscious, or that's the environment, that's what you're trying to achieve, really.
So if someone's not feeling that for whatever reason, how do you go about creating a space for someone to sort of feel that calm and ability to be themselves?
I think I think you need to pick the right moments when you're doing the stuff, the difficult stuff, the vocals. You have to pick those moments, in the right ways. So you'll spend some time with them first, and you'll do some other things, and they need to get to know you before they're straight in on the microphone. You kind of need to get to know each other, and I think that I think that definitely helps. Um,
I mean, like you said, there's that thing of you make a space where an artist just is allowed to be themselves. But you say there's that aspect of you getting involved with writing as a producer, but there's also, because I know through personal experience with you, there's also stuff you do or add or suggest. So when someone's kind of experimenting and finding their way, how much of you is allowing them just to do that, or are you helping them and sort of are you offering some guidance as they're going?
I think that depends very much on the artist, and you really have to gauge where your position in that is.
Yeah.
Because you can be, the projects that you get involved in cover such a wide range of what your input needs to be. And there are certain artists that come in with a really, really clear picture. They're very focused and they know exactly what needs to happen. And the way with those artists, you got to just facilitate what they do and stay out of the way. You got to not get in the way sometimes.
Yeah.
You got to let them do what they do really well, make sure that it's really good, and try not to screw it up, basically. So there's that end of it. And then there's the other end of it, like the thing that I'm doing at the moment, where I was approached and the guy has a good voice, but he didn't have any songs. And he literally just sent a few lines of lyrics. So
Wow.
In that scenario, obviously you're kind of that's the complete other end of the spectrum where you're needing to kind of create a song. You've got melody, you've got lyrics. So there's input into lyrics, there's input into the chords, there's input into the direction, the guitar, every single element you'll kind of need to be all over. So those are the two extremes of the spectrum, really. And projects kind of fit somewhere in between, usually will fit somewhere in between those two extremes. So you have to you have to figure out quite quickly what it is the artist needs your input to be.
Yeah. Okay. So that's not necessarily always known up front before you work with someone. It's something you feed in the way.
That's I would say that you don't really find that out until you're in the room.
Yeah. So obviously, the music industry's changed and everybody has bills to pay from, it's not the 90s anymore, but but presumably, when you're as someone is as well thought of as you, there's you can pick and choose to some extent what you kind of want to do. So what is it? Obviously you've got relationships that you have been going back some years, so you're going to have those people that come back to work with you. But when you're looking, when a new artist comes along and wants to work with you, and you say yes, what is it that's made you say yes? What is it in their sound or songs that you're looking for?
It's what would come first? I guess it's usually 9 times out of 10, it's the song or the voice.
Okay.
So, and it can be either of those things. Really, it can be either of those things. But yeah, I'd say that I love working with I love working with great singers.
Yeah.
But yeah, the song really is the thing. That's probably the top of the list, really.
It's good to hear, especially on a podcast called Songwriting for Songwriters, because it's from my point of view, I mean, I obviously love songwriting songs myself, and it's a big thing for me. But I think in some ways, it's not been watered down, but the importance of a song is somewhat changed over the last few years because it's become more disposable and easier to access. So it's it's sort of changed a bit. So it's quite good to hear that you'd hope it would be the song that would catch a producer like yours.
Yeah,
That's what you're looking for. But you've written, I mean, worked on some of the biggest songs of all time with some of the biggest artists of all time. And obviously, Urban Hymns was a huge record that you worked on, and you've gone on to have a relationship with Richard, um, who is a great singer and a great songwriter. When it's, as I mentioned in Chris's podcast, it's always interesting to me when you get those long-lasting relationships between, because in a band it's the singer and guitarist generally, isn't it? Who like this music and the sort of words.
Yeah.
But there's also that thing where you get an artist who works with the producer. It's true with Pete and Kevin Rowland from Dexys. It's true with Neil Young and Briggs and Nigel Godrich and Tom York and Radiohead. So you have that of Richard. And what is it? What is it between you two? Do you think? And we obviously got that idea of you being kind of a calm presence, but when you two work together, something big happens. It's widescreen, and there is a difference when he doesn't work with you or works with other people. There's a difference. So what, as a fan, I'm saying that. So what is it that you two think is that keeps you together and keeps you coming back and working together? What is that magic between you?
Well, obviously for me, I mean, he's just like, yeah, I mean, the songs and the voice is like it's a bit of a, like, when it's right, it's a deadly combination, it's it's something really special that he's got an incredible sense of melody, over the, sometimes over the simplest chords he'll just like, sing a line and stuff, and it's just like, oh, it's amazing really. And I think we, like, when we first worked together, he had this set of songs, and I think it's fair to say he'd sort of been struggling to record them. They had a few goes and it hadn't really happened. And then, we kind of hit on a way of doing it that seemed to work. And it started sounding really good. It sort of pretty early on, So I think, I think he's somebody, like I was saying, that really, it might not always be the clearest idea before he goes in. In fact, sometimes there's no song. But he is somebody, like we were saying a bit earlier, is somebody that you need to let him do his thing. He has to do his thing, and then it's a kind of what would I call it? It's like it's like a constant, making records with him. It's a bit like it's a constant sort of building process, really, where you sort of build some stuff and then you sort of knock it down a bit and kind of throw half of it, chisel away half of it and kind of throw it away, and then you'll kind of build some more stuff on top, and then I'll be chiseling away and kind of, and while he's piling things up and pulling things out, and kind of that process of adding and subtracting,
2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of approach.
Yeah. And we have, like, these days sometimes where we'll start the day with nothing, and it's not always like this. Sometimes he'll come with a complete song that is beautiful, and like most of the lyric and this incredible melody and stuff, and sometimes it'll be like that, and fairly easy to envisage what you need to do to make this into a record. And then other days will come and there'll be nothing at all. So we'll start with a drum beat, and then he'll do a few overdubs, and then I'll loop those overdubs, and then so we'll have a bunch of loops going for, I don't know, 7 or something. And then he'll do some more overdubs, and I'll loop those, and then we'll throw a few things away, and then I'll start. We might start slowly, kind of shaping it into some sort of arrangement, so that some things come in and some things drop out and at different points. So it's not just loops from all playing all the time, all the 7 minutes. So some things are coming in and going out, and then do some more overdubs, and we'll loop those, and kind of this process will go on all day, and then he'll do some vocals, and we'll get some vocal ideas and move those around, and then quite often we'll get to the end of the day and be listening back, and it's like we'll go, those 2 bars have been at it, kind of piling things on and taking things out and everything, and then at the end of the day there's 2 bars, so then we'll just throw everything out apart from those 2 bars.
Okay.
And then the process will begin again.
It's amazing to hear that, because I think it's quite a collaborative, creative thing then between the two of you in a way, and also it's quite interesting because I'm not sure everybody knows, but obviously if you've found Richard, it seems like became more of a traditional songwriter going into like the album 3, which is Urban Hymns. So for the first 2, it's much more of a band collaborative jam, where the other members of the band are fully like massively important to the sound. So it's quite nice to hear that he's creating from that way, because it seems to me as a melody writer that he is quite able to kind of go into a room and record and be brave enough just to see what happens, but also is also just playing a bit. And I think that comes out of that jamming thing,
The other thing that we've been fortunate enough to do is spend time in studios, a lot of time in studios over the years, like not so much waiting, but being able to capture the moment when the moment happens.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You can't necessarily every time go in on Monday morning and say, right, we're going to cut this song today and it's going to be the perfect version of this song. Sometimes it's just not like that,
Yeah.
So we have been able to, we've had the good fortune to be able to spend quite a lot of time in studios, and at certain points anyway, being able to, like I say, you don't end up waiting around for those moments, but when those streams of magic kind of come, you got to get it.
Yeah. And there's also tuning into where, like you say, having the patience to wait for that to happen, and also just knowing when it's happening as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's true. But
do you think
I think that's that's pretty much. I don't find that too difficult. It's like if what's coming out of the speakers is amazing and moving me, then it's it's happening. We're in one of those moments,
Do you think I asked Pete this question, but it's because producers, particularly like producers like you and Pete, who, I guess came through at a certain time. You've worked with some very big artists, and you're both known for like mixing as well as producing. So a lot of people can mix.
Yeah.
But do you think there's like it seems to me like there's a characteristic of like producers, which is not all of them, but there's some like a kind of friendly kind of person, a calm kind of person, and a kind of strength to them, and a resilience in dealing with lots of people. Do you think there's a similar quality to like, not similar, do you think there's a quality to songwriters outside of drummers and musicians, just directly songwriters? Do you think there's something going on that you recognize, like a similar quality between them?
Yeah, it's not the same, I don't think, but yeah, it's quite yeah, they tend to go quite introspective, maybe, like, a bit more, kind of looking in a bit more, and a bit more kind of consider, you know, that process of songwriting is often quite I think it's often quite you know, does sometimes it just comes and it's, you know, happens very naturally, but as well I think it can be quite you know, because sometimes needs to be quite a considered process.
Yeah.
Mm.
They're kind of an introspective kind of quality, you say.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Yeah, I think that's right.
What you know, if you've got a track and it's you're working with an artist and the song's not coming together for whatever reason, are you someone who chucks that away, or how do you salvage it?
You have to find a yeah, you have to find a way really. It's either whether that's, you know, recutting it from scratch, or whether it's losing the bass and redoing the bass, or changing what the drums are doing, or redoing the vocal, or, you know, there's a million different things that can be causing a problem, you know. um
If a song is bad, if the artist has written a song which just is a bit shit and they can't quite see it, will you? I mean, not that it's yours to call out, but will you kind of like, will you tell them, or like?
I'm generally quite diplomatic. I tend not to deliver that in quite so blunt a way, you know. I
Yeah.
try
Yeah.
because you're trying to keep the, you know, you're trying to keep the environment, you know,
Yeah.
in the right place. So um yeah, there are certain subtle kind of like hints that I'll yeah, there are subtle hints that I'll use, like if we're working on a lot of songs and yeah, there are.
Ways of
I,
like, yeah.
I can't give that away
No,
because
no, no. That's because we
I
don't
don't,
want
I don't know
anybody.
who's listening.
No, and we don't want to be in the studio with you and hear that phrase. That's what it means. Um, what advice would you give to songwriters? Because again, yours is a position of being really involved. So,
Mm.
like, it'd be quite interesting to hear kind of what advice you'd give to songwriters that are new or even established people. Like, what kind of advice would you give to them?
Um, don't chase anything. Um, just follow what, you know, follow the path that you want to follow, and yeah, I think once you start trying to make it like something, or trying to, I don't know, yeah, I think you need to just follow your path, and
I get you. I think it's
yeah,
because it's that thing where if you're trying to sound like someone else, it can be heard, and if you're trying to chase a hit,
yeah.
right,
I
that
mean, you can still, you know, obviously you can still write a good song like that, and you can still make something good, but you're not gonna, I don't know, it's gonna it's gonna be compromised in some way.
yeah.
You know, it's gonna be a version of, rather than something that's, you know, really kind of heartfelt and pure.
Do you have a pressure from like labels and management teams and whatever to kind of because on you as a producer, how do you navigate those kind of pressures?
It's interesting actually. It's less so these days. It's a little bit less so. Because I think there's, you know, the business has changed so much. There are a lot more people, um, where it might just be a management situation. Or it might, you know, historically it was always major labels, really, pretty much. And these days, you know, projects come from everywhere. So, um, but yeah, there can be that pressure. Um, and it's just part of the it's part of the job really, and I think you just have to find that balance between. It's tricky because you essentially in the room you are you're on the side of the artist,
Yeah.
but you have to walk that line with the record company where they've got to get what they want, they've got to get what they need.
Yeah.
At the same time, your primary obligation is to the creativity of the artist. So it's a fine, yeah, it can be a fine balance that sometimes.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I just remember,
Especially if they're at loggerheads, then that's
yeah,
yeah, that can be.
I guess as well, because I mean, it's not that. There's also that happens in bands, right? There's frictions in bands,
Yeah, of course.
and
Yeah.
that's the thing to manage as well as that.
Yeah.
I just remembered actually the first time I think it was the second time we met you. We came to Rack Studios and you were mixing our track called "Wake of the Dawn."
Mm-hmm.
We are just we're going to give you a lift back home to the train, and our Mercedes car got we parked in the Rack Studios.
Oh, you got stuck, didn't you? We got stuck.
And took it was about a 264-point turn. We were trying to offer you a lift to the train, and basically, I mean, we were
walked it there and back 4 times in the tunnel.
So yeah, we were both in this hysterics, thinking like we've met Chris, and what kind of an impression have we made here? Oh Jesus! So it just came flooding back to me there. But so songwriters that you love. I mean, Tell me some of the songwriters you
love. Jimmy Webb.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, he hit a little vein there that was like, wow. Yeah. Really, wow. And then who else? Bowie, just because the constant and massive reinvention that went on all the time. I mean, incredible, really. Just kind of such tangents and yeah. Yeah. Lots of people. Scott Walker.
Yeah.
Graham Parsons.
Awesome.
Out
of the acts you've worked with yourself, there's a
Neil Young.
Neil Young.
Mm.
Neil Young is definitely he's a really fascinating songwriter because of, like you say, Bowie does these kind of quite big chess moves from like one.
Yeah.
With Neil's stuff is much more. He like within his own songwriting, a bit like Richard actually. Within his own songwriting, there's a few moves he'll make, but he'll make the same moves across different records. So you've got Neil being heavy, Neil being light, Neil being, but he is someone who, like Richard as well, actually seems to gracefully move between those voices, without making a massive statement,
Sure. Yeah.
You've worked with some huge people: the Verve, the Rolling Stones, U2. I've got a list here: Blur, The Feeling, I'm Clute, The Zombies, Michael Kiwanuka, McCartney, Jagger, Tom Jones. I mean, so many. Do you have any kind of favorite experiences or favorite records or songs that you've worked on there from that long list of people you work with?
Yeah, I mean, as an experience, that first Rolling Stones record that I worked on, I engineered, which was Steel Wheels, was a bit of it was quite, that was quite an experience because I'd really only gone freelance as an engineer just only been about 3 or 4 months before.
Okay.
I didn't really, it happened very early, but you kind of just have to grasp the opportunities when they're there, really. And I'm probably, looking back on that, I probably had done a better job of it, or I was like, if it had come to me 5 years later. But you have to just you got to just jump in when these things come. And yeah, that was an incredible experience, really. Just kind of, we recorded most of it in Montserrat in the West Indies, and I just remember, like, on those first few days, we had a couple of days to set up because Keith was like 3 days late getting there. So we had some time to get the room set up and stuff. And then once everybody had arrived, there's that moment on the first day we were recording and getting sounds and recording, where just like was sort of pushing microphones up, and sort of there's this sound coming out of the speakers, and it's like, it's going to sound weird, this, but it sounds like the Rolling Stones. It sounds like a Rolling Stones record, and it's just the five of them in a room playing,
Yeah,
mixing, and it's all coming off the studio floor, and it sounds done. It sounds almost. I mean, apart from
yeah.
yeah, amazing.
I heard something because they got a new song out, haven't they? Angry.
Yeah,
It's one of those things where you kind of, as soon as it's that guitar tone and sound,
mm,
it's just
yeah,
so him, isn't it? It's just
yeah,
like,
it's, yeah,
there it
yeah.
is. There's that thing, and that's an interesting thing of recording
Yeah.
is like,
It's very physical for him. It's very,
right.
it's like, I don't think anybody else with that guitar and that amp is going to make anything like the same sound.
Sure.
It's like it's just comes out of him like that.
I mean, while on the subject guitarist for a minute, I mean, one of my, as you know, my personal kind of musical hero, if you like, is Nick McCabe, whose
Yeah,
guitar playing is to me just otherworldly, to be honest. And you had the um, honor and kind of relationship of working with him on guitar. Tell me about him and his kind of guitar tone and creativity? What did you make?
yeah. I mean, he's a definite one-off, Nick. He really is. Yeah, he's another force of nature. He's somebody that never plays. He never played what I expected him to play. So during, like, when we were doing Urban Hymns, he never seemed to play the obvious part. It's always something other than that.
Right, okay.
Quite often won't play the same thing twice, or doesn't play the same thing twice, and whatever it is like makes you go, whoa, whoa. So there's a lot of hanging on, when he's playing, because
right.
it's like right, he goes all around the edges, and it's incredible what he does. And to watch him, I've never seen anybody have so much time playing the guitar. He sort of just seems to kind of just, like, he'll play a chord and then he'll kind of hold it and it'll start modulating into something, and then he'll scratch his head and go and, like, fiddle with a pedal, and then he'll kind of turn around and walk around the room, and then he'll play something else. So it's kind of like he's got all this huge kind of time in between what he does.
Wow.
But yes, I mean, incredible with guitar sound, with sound, like, yeah. And usually, that whole side of it is effortless with him as well. It's like it just comes out of what he's doing, and it's not, at that time anyway, it was very simple setup that he was getting a lot of, like, amazing sounds out of. Really, really simple.
It's amazing that, because it's one of those things where, like, his playing just does sound effortless, but obviously there is thought behind it. But it's quite interesting to hear you talk about, almost like riding it with him. Like, you can kind of hear it in the performances. Like, there's a feeling of, like, it feels fresh and new. And even with Black Submarine and other stuff he's done, you don't quite know what's going to happen. It's quite an exhilarating thing to do. And also,
it's very much like that recording, because it's a lot, certainly on that record, on Urban Hymns, a lot of those parts weren't really, I didn't get a sense that he'd worked a lot of it out beforehand. I mean, and it was, like at the point at which we were recording it, it was kind of happening for the first time,
Yeah.
and it's moments of absolute, there are moments of absolute, like.
Well, also, like when someone's that, if you like, experimental or creates sonic landscapes, the hookiness as well of the riffs. You imagine some
Yeah,
songs want those
yeah,
instantaneous hits. So he's working on a multiple levels, I think.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, he was doing some of that looping he was doing, and then some of it we sort of, because we had like a really early version of Pro Tools on that record.
Right, right.
And we cut the record to tape, but we had I had a little 4-track kind of Pro Tools setup that we were flying the guitars to and kind of looping bits of it and being able to kind of arrange. And that was sort of really pretty much for the first time you could really do that at that point. And that sort of helped. But yeah, I mean, yeah, amazing. Some of the things that he's done, that he put on that record.
Is there do you know when a record's going to be a big record or not? As a producer, like when we're making a record as an artist and with a producer, everybody's on board and excited. But do you know when there's going to be like, it's going to be, if you like, quote unquote, successful? Do you have a way of kind of feeling that, or is it just down to luck and it's impossible to kind of know?
I think I think when something's got a really good chance.
Yeah.
I don't think you can ever be absolutely positive, because I think there's a bit of a random factor involved in terms of timing and the stuff that goes on after the record leaves the studio. That's all totally, that's out of your control. But yeah, I think there are records that you work on that you think really have a good chance. Definitely.
Excellent.
It doesn't always work out like that.
No.
But
there's kind of no justice in the music industry in a way, is there sometimes?
not really, no, not really. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's the love. I mean, do you still love making record after all this amazing career? And
I do.
you still love it.
I do absolutely love it. Yeah. Yeah. It's still different, every record's different still, and there's still loads of stuff to learn. You never stop learning. You never, just the way that sound, collides together is different every time. It's always different. So yeah, I don't think that'll stop.
Excellent. And just coming towards the end of our time together for this, and thank you for your time, Chris. But I just wanted I'd like to ask everybody, from a songwriting point of view, is like, what song do you wish you could have written? But so let's ask from a kind of production kind of view, what record would you have loved to have produced?
I watched that documentary the other night. Watched the Harmony Game. You seen that?
No, I haven't.
Simon and Garfunkel thing.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, probably yeah, maybe something off that record. Only Living Boy in New York,
Nice.
Or maybe yeah, No Regrets. Scott Walker is it's a big record for me. It's kind of like, it sounds incredible.
Yeah.
And his vocal when it comes in is like, it's like the biggest, like deepest, richest thing ever. Amazing. Yeah, maybe one of those two.
My favorite Scott song is Big Louise. You know that song?
Right. Yeah.
Enormous, like you say, it's enormous. He starts like, she stands all alone, and then this is this massive thing which you can't work out quite where it's all come from. And that's that's the joy of, like, for me, like, listening to having, again, on one of our tracks, Shooting Star, there's a bit where you just delayed a vocal, and it's my favorite part of the record, because obviously we didn't do that bit. You just added this magic, and it starts to feel like it's not just like a song. There's a deeper thing. You've got that as a producer. You've got that way of making sounds of your artists that are deep and cosmic and widescreen, and they don't feel like you're listening to something which is planned. There's something else which just is, you know. And
Right.
it's a Chris Potter sound, which many people I have spoken to who, you know, didn't know that we'd work together, or just have mentioned you as being the guy with the like widescreen kind of sound. So
Right.
you know, thank you for all your records. But
Oh,
one
that's
thing,
very, very kind of you.
if there's somebody you'd love to, so we've got Simon and Garfunkel there, but if there's somebody you haven't worked with yet but you could work with who haven't split up or died, is there an artist out there that you'd love to kind of have a go at working with?
Yeah. Yeah, Bowie and Prince. But unfortunately, like you say, who haven't split up or died. Um, that's tough. Yeah, I don't think you're getting an answer to that one.
That's all right. Maybe that person has not arrived yet, and they'll
Yeah,
come
maybe not. Yeah, maybe not.
cruising through their sort of sky with their songs and win you over.
Yeah, yeah.
Chris, thank you so much for your time. And
Oh, you're more than welcome anytime.
anyone who's listening, Chris Potter has a website and a list of records you can go and check out, or his work, and maybe even get in touch if you're a songwriter. So thanks, Chris, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.